Hello and welcome to Doing Good in the Community with a Lot of Good. I'm your host, Yvette Walker. This show highlights nonprofits, ministries, and individuals doing good in the communities around us. Each show is brought to you by A Lot of Good, a 501c3 nonprofit based in Upland, California that works with others to provide goods and support to families dealing with a crisis. By working with partners in the community, outlying areas and hospitals across Southern California, A Lot of Good lives the words of its tagline. Together, we do a lot of good. I'm very excited to have everyone here from our guest today representing a nonprofit with a history dating back over 100 years. I'd like to introduce the executive director of a wonderful shelter for women and their children called Pacific Lifeline. Here is Carmen Hall. Hello, Carmen. Welcome to Doing a Lot of Good in the Community.
Hi, Yvette. It's nice to be here today. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I know you have so many people relying on you, but I need to say, I've lived in Upland a while, and I've been aware of Pacific Lifeline. For those that don't really know a lot about Pacific Lifeline, can you share how this organization started?
Yes. It started by the Brethren in Christ Church about over 100 years ago. They were very puritanical, very pacifist, very strict in what they thought, but they felt very strong at that point to open up a shelter. And so they opened up a shelter in San Francisco for men that were World War I and II veterans that were alcoholics. And in order to get food in the food line, they had to come to a church service. After that, they started working with over 10,000 families per month in the San Francisco area, more in the 1970s, 1980 time period. And they'd feed over 10,000 people per month. And then it evolved to a women's shelter only that was in San Francisco, and then came to Southern California in 1995.
Now that Pacific Lifeline cares for women and children, how do people get referred to the organization for support?
Women are referred to us from throughout the state, primarily from the 3 different counties of Los Angeles County, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties, from other agencies of domestic violence, of rehab, sometimes from the courts, sometimes from different kinds of environments that the case managers know the background of the woman and feel that they're ready for our program.
How many families stay at Pacific Lifeline at one time, and what is the average length of stay?
We usually work with about 5 families at a time, 27 maximum people. That would include children and women, and they usually stay with us 1 to 2 years. That will vary based on the amount of needs that they may have. We do a lot of reunification with mothers and their children as well. So it will vary, but usually about 1 year to 2 years that they're with us.
So the past year has also been a real challenge for most everyone, but it was especially hard for Pacific Lifeline and its campus. Can you go over how that was?
At the end of February, we had our last face-to-face fundraiser, and that next week we had a flood that destroyed the whole shelter. We had to get about a $400,000 loan. We had to take the women out of the home and put them in a bed and breakfast for about 4 months, 4 to 5 months. And it was a very trying time, but we made it.
I'm curious, how did you get to Pacific Lifeline?
I had been in education, and my husband and I were in Northern California. He had worked at Cisco Systems, and we had married children that were down in Southern California, and we falsely thought that they needed us. And so we came back down to Southern California, and I got a call about doing some diagnostic work or organizational kind of assessment over this particular organization, and I was called in to do that specifically. I had not ever worked in this sector. I actually didn't have a desire to do that. I wanted to help the organization, but I had no intentions of staying. So anyway, long story short, it'll be 18 years that I have been at Pacific Lifeline and stayed throughout this whole time.
Oh my, after 18 years of being at Pacific Lifeline, you must have numerous memories and stories about some of the people that have come through your doors. What is one of your favorite memories?
I don't know if it's a favorite memory, but it sticks out in my mind greatly about a woman who she was about in her late 40s and she brought her 11-year-old son with her. She had older children, but she hadn't had a driver's license all of her life. And it was due she had been a meth addict all this time. The 11-year-old son, the reason why this story to me is so phenomenal, had never in his lifetime had a birthday party. And one of the things we do at Pacific Lifeline is always have birthday parties for children. For one reason is we are teaching women how to have birthday parties and that it's important. The other part of it is for children that are so traumatized to be recognized that their life matters, that their birthday matters, that they matter, is many times transforming. So this particular family had been with us. She had been a meth addict all the way up to the point before she had came to our home and had totally quit all of her drugs, came there, was totally clean the whole time, was able to get her driver's license. We got a donated car that we were able to give to them. She got out on her own and then started to raise her grandsons as well, was reunited with the older children, and has done incredibly well, incredibly well.
That is a great story. Pacific Lifeline is scheduled to be the Spotlight Community Partner for April 2021. How did that relationship come about?
During the pandemic, we weren't able to take donations. And I was referred to a lot of good, and I started taking my own donations to a lot of good. What struck me, and then I found out that they were involved with Stephen's Hope. A lot of good has incredible volunteers. They were wonderful. They helped me get all kinds of stuff out of my car. I would actually, a lot of the donations that we could not take at Pacific Lifeline, we would take to a lot of good. They're a wonderful organization. I constantly am referring people. I just did this morning with another lady who is going to be moving. I talked to her about going up to a lot of good. So I personally got involved with a lot of good before I have gotten involved with it from our agency standpoint, and I do a lot of referrals to a lot of good.
Very nice. So, can you share with us in what ways the partnership with A Lot of Good benefits those that are being assisted at Pacific Lifeline?
The thrift store is a huge resource for women who come into our home sometimes without nothing. Many times if they're fleeing domestic violence and they have been in another domestic violence home, A Lot of Good and what they are doing for Pacific Lifeline and for our families is a huge asset for us.
It's wonderful. What are the biggest needs right now at Pacific Lifeline where support from the community would make the most impact?
Probably one of the needs that we have are cleaning supplies. Many times we have diapers that we need. We are not a food bank, so we don't utilize that. We've utilized other organizations that do that. Sometimes we need gas cards for women. Many times we will need help like with backpacks, things like that for children in that way.
So, looking forward past the pandemic and beyond 2021, do you see Pacific Lifeline growing and expanding its capacity or reach? Are there volunteer opportunities available at Pacific Lifeline? Do you need help with events or someone who can fix things or anything else?
Yes, we do. We'll be opening up our volunteer program. Usually once a month we have a volunteer projects to which families bring their children and they'll work actually on our grounds, not actually in the shelter, but they'll work in our grounds. So we always are needing volunteers. We have different kinds of projects that are going on all the time. Many times people will want to work directly with families. If that occurs, they have to have Department of Justice give approval for fingerprints and that type of thing. But people can go to our website at www.pacific-lifeline.org, and they can download our volunteer form and fill that out, and we'll get in touch with people. We are also in the process of building our third and fourth permanent house on our property. So we have about 4 different kinds of programs. And our permanent housing program to help with housing needs of women. Of course, 4 houses isn't enough, but it is a way that we're still working with families.
Hopefully someone will see this and be moved to become a volunteer or financial supporter. Are people able to donate online or via an app or send in a check? Where can they go?
You can donate online at our website. We still have many people who send in a check to Pacific Lifeline at our address.
Well, Carmen, I want to thank you so much for being here today to share about Pacific Lifeline. There is so much I'd like to continue to talk about, but our time is up. Even though my time chatting with Carmen is over, you have plenty of time to reach out right now. Go to their website, get some information, and support them however you can. Their website address is www.pacific-lifeline.org, or you can call them at 909-931-2624. And don't forget to check out alotofgood.org and visit the A Lot of Good thrift store, open 7 days a week right here in Upland, California. You can find links to Pacific Lifeline and A Lot of Good in the information section below. Leave your comments and remember to like, subscribe, and follow A Lot of Good and A Lot of Good Thrift on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Until next time, this is Yvette Walker for A Lot of Good, doing good in the community. Remember, together we do a lot of good. See you soon.